it. Well, hey, you found us for episode 4 of Small Biz Big Ideas. Um,
Big, really big,
really
very
big,
big, very big.
very, very big. With Jim Moy and the best head of hair in all of small business, Charlie Dirador. And
There it is,
today,
folks.
because we only bring you interesting people, we only bring you the best of the best in small business, we'd like to introduce you to Catherine Winter.
Thank you
Hey,
guys so much
Catherine,
for having me. I'm excited to be here.
this is gonna be fun.
I mean, listen, I look at her background and like there's a part of me that feels excited. There's a part of me that feels a little scared. Like that may be something from a
That's because
horror
you're
movie.
scared of horses.
I'm
Do
not
I
scared
look
of horses.
scary?
He told me he was scared of horses.
When did I tell you I was scared of horses? I'm not scared of horses. I grew up in the
I'm
country.
kidding with you. I'm kidding with you.
I mean, I'm cows. I'm a little weird about cows because I grew up mostly around cows.
Fair.
They eat slow, and their
You
mouths are
don't
shut.
trust things that eat slow, do you?
No, because they eat fast.
Neither do I. I get it.
I mean, you got to get while the getting is good.
Yep.
So, Catherine, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh gosh.
Can,
So,
can I interrupt for just a minute? I met Catherine at the Lexington Horse Center
mhm,
in Lexington, Virginia,
six
about
years
what,
ago.
5, 6 years
6 years
ago?
ago.
And I walked by and she had this little tent and it had a few things out on the table. And I said, I need safety stirrups. And she said, I know just the safety stirrups you need. What kind of riding do you do? What level are you? And she sold me a set of stirrups. And she didn't push, she didn't pressure. And I said, this person knows what. So I started following her on Facebook. And the person we're talking to tonight is not only accomplished, as you can see by her CV and all the accomplishments you can find on her LinkedIn, but she has a presence on social media unlike anyone I've met in the business. Now, you got plenty of trainers, horse trainers out there who have this, I'm in the camera and I'm talking to you now about how to ride this. But Catherine is the same person you meet in public that you see on camera talking about the important facet of XYZ safety equipment. So that's why you're here tonight. And I want to thank you personally for agreeing to come on. And Jim, your question stands. Where are
Well,
you
first
from?
of all,
Where are you from? What you do?
so high praise from you. So I appreciate that. Um, Gosh, so going way back because it'll bring us back to how I got into the equestrian space as a business. I started riding when I was 7 years old. Neither of my parents were equestrians. It was just one of those crazy little girls that was like, I want a pony. And here we are a lot of years later. I won't say how many. It has always been a hobby and a passion of mine, and I love the community. But I made the decision to, follow through with my education, got my bachelor's degree, my master's, my doctorate, and went to work in corporate America. And, the role that I played in different organizations was the type of role that it was really transferable between organizational types. So I worked in healthcare. I worked for tech companies like IBM. I worked for consulting companies like CGI. And I ended my corporate career working for a pharmaceutical company, which was something very different from anything I'd done. And I was just really missing my passion and being in a community that I really loved. I was still riding as a hobby, but I wanted to do more than that. And COVID hit, and I was presented with the opportunity to pursue my passion, and here we are 6 years later.
Opportunity. Um, what opportunities did you see pre-COVID, not in this space, but for yourself? If COVID had not happened,
Hmm.
where would Catherine be today?
I mean, truthfully, I'd probably still be working in corporate America. I mean, if I had to put myself back in those shoes, I was really challenge oriented, goal oriented, career ladder oriented. So, I would see myself as, somebody that was an executive level in one of the companies that I was working for. And I'm a bit of a workaholic. I probably work too much, and that's even more true now owning my own business. You work about 3 times as many hours as you ever did before owning your own business. But that's what I would see. And obviously, a lot of people live that life and have a tremendous amount of fulfillment from it. But I had gotten to a point where I felt like I was part of a big machine. And while I certainly recognized, my small wins and my small impacts, they didn't feel as deeply meaningful as I was hoping for in the longer term. And so I was starting to feel a little bit of that. I don't know if discontent is the right word, but just wanting something more. And I really wasn't sure what that could or should be, to be honest. The business that I have now and the growth of it really happened fairly accidentally, in that a need presented itself in terms of my own experience, and I built the business based on that need.
Tell me about that.
So what I specialize in is keeping equestrians safe when they're riding. So I am involved in working with equestrian safety equipment. And first and foremost, I see myself as somebody that informs and educates people about equestrian safety so that they can best advocate for themselves to keep themselves safe in the saddle. And then secondarily, I have stuff to sell. I have safety equipment that is available for purchase if somebody so feels that based on the information that they now have, that using some of that equipment would be appropriate to them. And the way this came about for me is that I had a horse that, Charlie, this will be meaningful for you. Jim, I don't know if this will be speaking Chinese to you, but she was a 1.30 amateur jumper, which is not small fences.
Nope.
But I hit a certain age where I started getting really nervous, and I had been pretty fearful previous to that.
Fearful or fearless?
Fearless, or no, so I was fearless previously. Starting to just with age, the jumps looked a lot bigger. It was making me nervous. It took a lot mentally for me to get to the competition arena. And I started looking for other things that I could do. And this horse was just a wonderful horse. She would do anything. And so one day I was like, let's go do her in this other discipline. And she was like, great, let's go do it. But then another day I was like, I want to go and try eventing. And for eventing, where you're going cross country, you're required to wear certain types of safety equipment. It's not required in a lot of other disciplines. You always have to have a helmet, but not necessarily torso protection. So I needed torso protection. And the first time out, I borrowed my trainer's wife's equipment. But then I decided I need to go get my own. So I started researching because I have a very analytical and data-oriented mind. So I wanted details and facts about what would be most appropriate for me. And I found it really challenging to get that information so that I could make the best decision. And I ended up going to one of the largest international events in the country in Lexington, Kentucky. And I went to a shop that is known for safety equipment. And I was like, I need maximum bounce. I need to be able to not get hurt, to hit something and, not feel it. And they're like, oh, are you doing like this major international level? And I'm like, no, I'm jumping 18 inches for this discipline. And they thought that was really funny. And they sold me like the heaviest duty thing. But then it comes to find out it wasn't what I needed. And so that experience really stuck with me. And then around the same time, there was an Irish Olympian named Kevin Babington that had just a catastrophic accident. And this is one of the nicest guys you would ever meet, very well liked on the circuit. and extremely capable. And now he can't walk. And I think when that happened, a lot of people really woke up and they're like, oh, if it can happen to him, it can happen to me. And so they started looking for safety equipment, but they were encountering the same things that I was. So that appeared to me like there are plenty of retailers that sell safety equipment, but not someone at the time that was like the only thing that they really focused on. And my goal was to get as much information as possible, to get trained by the manufacturers, to be talking to researchers, and then to carry the broadest selection of products. So I never felt like I had to push somebody into the only thing that I had to sell. I have everything, so I don't need to push something that's not someone's best interest. And so that's how I started the business.
Talk to me about initial planning. Now, we're not just talking to somebody here with a college degree. We're talking to somebody who's got an MBA and a doctorate in business as well. So it's not like you went into this trying to feel your way through the gauzy night, right? You had education for this, you had corporate experience, but not really in sales so much.
I had
In
never
people,
really had
a
a retail
lot.
job. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting about you early on as we got to know each other. This is somebody who did not come from a, I know about POS, I know about locations, I know about real estate. You seemingly, not to belittle anybody who does know these things and doesn't make mistakes or make mistakes out of the gate. But if you started in 2020 and you have the reputation you now have, what did you bring to the table and how did that business plan get formatted in the early stages? Because I know a person with a doctorate is not going to go around and go, well, let's see, I'll go to these two people and buy these products and see if they sell. So talk to us a little bit about how, and this, all of this podcast, this whole thing is set up so that it's education,
Yep.
right? So the guy starting an HVAC company, a woman starting a salon is listening to this, watching this possibly, to learn from somebody who our first two guests have done varied things. You've obviously done something wildly different than them, but the principles of beginning a business, a small business, are the same. What were the principles? What were the guiding ideas when you began from the beginning?
So I definitely started by putting together a business plan because I needed to flesh out what did I want to be, what was my mission, what did I not want to be, because it's easy to get sucked into things because especially at the beginning when you're hemorrhaging money, it's really easy to go chase shiny balls in different places because you think they're going to make money and that pulls you away from your mission. And then to me, that affects your integrity with the people that you're working with. So I really wanted to be very clear on what I was doing and why I was doing it and how I was going to do it. And from there, it was about identifying the brands and the partners that I wanted to work with. I was lucky in that one of the people that was giving me guidance early on is a friend, but also an exceptionally smart and savvy businesswoman of her own, in her own right. And so she gave me ideas and was kind of a sounding board. And then by pure luck, one of my very first customers, I literally met her in a parking lot at a horse show with product in the back of my vehicle. And she had never met me before and saw something and took me under her wing and connected me to people that I didn't know before. And both of those women are tremendous parts of my success. So it's also about finding people that are going to build you up, that are going to be your sounding board, that are going to give you honest feedback and tell you when you shouldn't do anything, to be very clear on what your boundaries are and what you really want to be about. I knew, for example, early on that I didn't want to take on debt to start my business. I know that I was in a very luxurious situation to be able to do that. I was able to use my own money to start the business, but it wasn't a lot of money. Like, we're talking low five figures. And what I was able to do is to work with manufacturers and brand partners that also understood my vision and would allow me to not physically carry the inventory and pre-sell it and then ship it quickly. And that's how I got started. Now, over the last 6 years, the product mix has changed. The brand, my brand storyline has evolved. It hasn't done a 180. It's just grown and expanded based on what I see going on in the market and what my customers are asking for. But I still have the same standards for the partners that I work with. The difference is that they've helped me grow, and we both benefit in that I'm able to turn over their product at a great rate. I now buy it and inventory it and warehouse it myself. So for the people that believed in my vision, they've been successful along with me, and it's been mutually beneficial.
So in the beginning of all of this, what were the three biggest mistakes that you think you made?
Oh gosh, I can only do three.
It's a great
Um,
question.
Gosh, narrowing it down to three. I mean, I think at the beginning, honestly, you know, one of the things that really caught me off guard is there was such a pent-up demand for the service that I was offering. And with COVID, the supply chains were a nightmare. And part of what I was doing was helping people and taking orders and taking money for their orders, telling them when the product was coming, but the product took longer than that. And the problem was is that I was using that money. I'm like totally opening the kimono here. I was using that money to start investing in inventory. And then when the product was ready, I would get these massive bills that had already been reinvested. And again, I didn't want to take on debt. So I didn't want to take out a loan to do it. So there was definitely some like heart attack nights of how am I going to cover this spread because I've already reinvested this money and now I have to pay the manufacturers to be able to get this product in to ship to clients. So that was, I mean, that was a huge lesson for me is to be more aware of what you've got sitting, not just in current AR, but also down the pike for orders that you've placed. And it has changed how I work with manufacturers as well, because I have some manufacturers that require a deposit upfront before they manufacture. I have others that we just pay when they ship. So just being a little bit more in tune with how all of those terms are working and what I have coming down the pike in terms of orders coming in to be able to fulfill customer request. So that one was, I know it's not three, but it was huge for me and it was terrifying in that first year because at that point we're talking about six figures, honestly, to fulfill these orders and I was able to make it work, but it was a huge lesson learned to be much more aware of the cash flow situation.
Okay.
And a second mistake, possibly, that you'd think of.
This,
I don't want to push you into telling us all the bad stuff, but
yeah, no, no.
it's
I mean,
important for people who are listening to hear
absolutely, absolutely.
what somebody else went through.
You have to learn from your failures. And I used to always say, failure is your first attempt in learning. So it's always, what are you learning from those mistakes so that you make different ones or you don't do that again. I think the other thing that I did is, I tried to go a lot of places and probably spread myself a little too thin. And, you know, from a personal perspective, I'm married, I don't have kids. So that gave me some flexibility that I know a lot of people might not have to travel and go and, do some events that I was doing. But I definitely didn't do a good job with work-life balance. It's still something I struggle with every day. It's, something that I'm constantly like, how can I be home more and spending time with my husband and doing things with him? I think anytime that you own your own business, you feel guilty sometimes for taking time off, and taking time for yourself because you're thinking about all these things that you could and should be doing. So that's a mistake I made early on, and I'll be really transparent about it. It's one that I still make. I took my husband out and drove his golf cart while he golfed 9 holes yesterday, and the entire time I was on my phone thinking like, I should be working. It's a constant struggle, and that's something that's really hard to disconnect yourself from.
Three
Is that?
wins.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
So what would you say kind of the three best things that you accomplished kind of out of the box?
So I I feel like I joke that this is like the only time or only thing in my life that I've timed really well. I was just really lucky with the timing because who would have thought it'd be a good idea to start a business during COVID and quit a corporate job that you were getting paid six figures for and had all the benefits in the world and everything else, and basically go to not paying yourself barely anything at all because you're reinvesting everything in the business. But I just happened to have timed it right. For COVID, everybody was on lockdown, but they had all this money that was coming in. I know that's not for everybody, but there was benefit money coming in. And for equestrians that, frankly, a lot of them are higher up on the economic scale, and there were other things that they weren't able to spend money on. So they were just like pouring it into my market. And so I think that infusion of cash was just really lucky timing wise. So I think that was a really good and lucky thing. Meeting that one customer was completely serendipitous, because again, she has been just the most amazing support. She still to this day is a close friend, connects me with people, gives me good feedback, all the things. So that was a serendipitous thing. And just being able to quit a corporate job when I felt like I had grown enough. And I mean, I did that pretty quickly. I want to say it was like 6 months in that I was like, okay, this is going to go somewhere. And I feel like I can quit it and not be putting my husband and I in a financial, pit or anything else, that we'd be able to support ourselves and things like that. But so much of it is just recognizing when something good is happening and letting it happen to you versus wanting to tinker with it. Because sometimes when you overfix something, it blows up.
Right.
So it's just recognizing it and kind of going for the ride versus knowing when you need to course correct.
One of the wins, Jim asked for three wins, I guess it was. One of the wins I've noticed with you is you have leveraged social media better than most small businesses I've seen, especially a small business with, I'm assuming you have 3 or 4 employees, maybe
Right.
more.
Yep.
But I think it's about 3 or 4 employees.
Yep.
Tell us about how you discovered social media and how you learned, because it is a learning curve,
Mhm.
how to use social media to inure to the benefit of your business.
So I've always been a social media scroller, but not someone that was like actively involved. But I think, there's a Facebook group that is made up of amateur riders that was an early key to my success because they were all talking about this type of equipment and asking the same questions I was asking. And so I was in there answering questions. And I'm also convinced that that group has been a huge part of my success and my growth. And I was getting asked a lot of the same questions over and over again. And then I was getting asked really interesting questions. I love getting stumped with questions. Like, there's no such thing as a dumb question with what I do. And the more that you can make me kind of think and like, hadn't thought about that before, that's what I really enjoy. So I realized that social media was a great platform to be able to inform and educate and to do that in the most efficient way possible. I'm pretty comfortable with public speaking. I've done it a lot in my corporate career. So I don't have any problem getting in front of the camera, doing a spiel. I typically don't script. I know what I want to say. I might have to do another take, but I just say what I think needs to be said.
Is that because you know the product, or is that because you know your audience, or is that because you know both?
Both. I think it's knowing what information the audience is looking for, but also knowing the product. And so, if I see people making common mistakes that they don't even know are mistakes, I'll go do a video about it and be like, hey, did you know? And then inevitably I'll get people saying, oh my God, I had no idea that that's why you did X, Y, and Z, or why this is important. Because again, at the end of the day, what I really want is for people to be able to enjoy the sport for as long as possible. And that means keeping them from getting hurt. And that means making sure that they understand how best they can avoid that type of injury, because it's a really high risk activity. I mean, equestrians have among the highest injury rates of any sport, even beyond football and beyond hockey. So it's something that it's very clear what the products that I work with can do for someone. And it's just really helping other people understand this is what will work, this is what won't work. We want you to have clear expectations about what these things can and cannot do. So that people, when they're going to make purchases for themselves, they have reasonable and factual expectations.
When you built that original business plan,
Mhm.
did you foresee yourself traveling to shows, to horse shows to sell this equipment? Or did you originally build out, say, a 5-year plan and say, eventually I am going to have brick and mortar? Because if I'm not mistaken, you have 2 brick and mortars, right?
I would call them quasi brick and mortars because they're at event facilities that are they're not open like 52 weeks a year. But my plan was never to have a brick and mortar. That was not.
That's what I was after. I wanted to understand that. Yeah.
That was not in my business plan at all. So originally my plan was to mimic the saddle selling model. So for those that are not in the equestrian industry, the way that saddles generally get sold is you have representatives that have a bunch of demo saddles, and they may go and pop up at a horse show. And they also build relationships with trainers in different constituencies, and
But they have territories.
They have territories, and I didn't really think so much of a territory per se. Like I figured like I'm going to be Southeast because I'm in North Carolina, but I wasn't going to necessarily limit myself to that just because I knew that nobody else was doing exactly what I was doing the way I was doing it.
Can I interrupt for one question?
Yeah.
Anybody doing this on the West Coast the way you're doing it?
No, not on the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah. I've thought about expanding into the West Coast, and there are reasons I've made the decision not to do that, but I will travel to the West Coast occasionally. Okay. But yeah, so my plan was just to go and work through trainers and relationships and networks and kind of go to the different facilities and have like appointments and things like that. That was my plan. I did not have a plan to have a brick and mortar. And this friend that I met in my parking lot, on that day, it was at a parking lot. It was in the parking lot at the Tri International Equestrian Center, which is where one of our brick and mortars are. And she looked at me and she was like very kind but very direct and said, "You need to be better organized and you really need to set up here for a show." And she was good friends with the vendor coordinator. So I arranged to do a pop up for 2 weeks. And the 2 weeks were so good that I did a third week. And then the vendor coordinator said, "You really need to come and set up here permanently." And so the next season, I did a half cabin, and that was my permanent location. I still traveled to some shows, other shows in the off weeks, and I still went to Barnes and, stuck with my original business plan. It was just that I added this brick and mortar. And now we have two full cabins and the courtyard in between that is our primary brick and mortar, if you will. And then we also have one now at the World Equestrian Center in Ocala, which that's new this year. We used to always do the winter circuits, but I am lucky enough to have a really wonderful employee down there that I knew would do a really good job. And so we signed a contract to do year round down there. But that was not part of the plan. And it's a good example of if you have good gut instincts, and I preface it with the um, if you have good gut instincts, then roll with some of the opportunities that get presented as long as they're aligned with your mission and what you're trying to accomplish longer term and it's going to get you to where you're trying to go. Then don't box yourself in because sometimes you get blessings in disguise that you should take advantage of.
Where are you trying to go?
I mean,
By the way, I'm known for these questions.
that's no,
I,
it's great.
I'm
So,
known for these callback questions. I've got two or three things you've said in the past 30 minutes,
yeah,
but this one I wanted to hit you with immediately because you're 6 years in.
yep,
You haven't failed.
haven't
Failure
failed.
rate in small business is extraordinarily high, as you know.
Yep.
Where are you trying to go now?
So it's interesting that you asked that because I've really been thinking about this a lot in the past few weeks, in part because we had an exceptionally busy March and April with really big events that have just been exhausting, really rewarding, but exhausting. And I've also had a couple of experiences in the last couple of years where I thought that I wanted to grow and I explored it and even took a couple of steps. And then I came to realize that while my footprint might have been bigger, it would have been more stressful and it wouldn't have actually generated more revenue because of the amount of overhead that it would have cost me to grow that physical footprint. And I constantly get reminded of that when I think about growth. And what I'm finding when I look at my numbers for the past couple of years is that the growth has been pretty organic and it's about getting in front of the right people with the right products and building the relationships because a lot of the growth is coming either from repeat business or referral business, which is fantastic, and that I don't necessarily need a bigger geographical footprint. And if anything, I'm being more careful now looking at what events I'm going to and pulling back from some of them because the return hasn't been there either from like a fun perspective, because traveling to an event is a lot of work and it better be fun. If it's not fun, I'm not doing it again. um, and really getting in front of that clientele that I've built the relationships with. So, there's some shows next year that I'm looking at maybe not going back to, not because they weren't fruitful, but because just again, from a balance perspective and a fulfillment perspective, I can have better balance and be just as fulfilled without spreading myself too thin.
So, as you talk about, your experience with the brick and mortar and kind of why you ended up ultimately going that direction, even though it wasn't in your business plan. Um, how did you resolve the capital issues? Because I think that's a thing that people struggle with, right?
Mhm.
The guy who has a taco truck and he's thinking, maybe I can do a second one, but they're scared to step out on that limb because capital scares everyone.
Yep.
Money scares everyone. And you took
Yep.
a very different route by saying, hey, I'm not going to just immediately take on debt.
Right, right. And, when I say that I didn't take on debt, I should clarify. I don't have the type of debt where I have any assets at risk. Like, I don't have my house leveraged. I don't have my cars leveraged. I don't have any property, leveraged as collateral. But for example, my sales platform is Shopify. And, it is such an easy platform to work with, but they will do capital loans. So if you need, a bridge loan, for example, because you're trying to bring in inventory, you can do that. They will give you a capital loan against your sales based on what your sales have historically been. But it's
I
not
just tried
something.
to kill a spider.
Oh,
Sorry.
fun. I was wondering what you were doing. But that has been a nice way, and
All
and
right, guys.
you're good. But part of it, I'm very careful again about the terms of those capital bridges. I negotiate the rates, I negotiate the timelines because I want to get through them as quickly as possible. It's really meant because let's say there's a new product hitting the market and I want to have as much of it as possible so that I'm at the forefront of being able to offer it. And so I need to invest deep. I'll use it for something like that. Um, I definitely have one credit card, only one, and I try, frankly, to charge as much as I can to that card and then pay it off every single month. But I get rewards on those credit cards that I use for the travel that I need for the business. So it's not that I have zero debt, it's that I have zero collateralized debt, and I could pay out the debt with anything that's in my bank account, but I'm choosing to keep that cash flow to invest in other things.
Well, I think you just hit on what is the key point for a lot of people, right? Is learning the fiscal balance. Some of it is fiscal discipline, but a lot of it is the balance. Uh, because it's not an easy thing to learn. And then the other thing is people get caught in the trap, right? They get caught in the credit card trap, or
Yeah.
they get caught in the factoring trap. And that's not to take shots at those industries. It's just saying that if you're not careful and you don't have a plan
Yeah.
to walk down that road will easily consume you. And clearly, you thought about all of those things before you decided to go the directions that you went. And I think that's great advice to people. You got to be able to think about this. You got to play 3D chess with yourself when you're trying to kind of think of your fiscal situation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about taking out any sort of loan or debt to buy yourself more time, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You should be taking out debt to invest and to grow as appropriate and doing that in a very calculated way, but you shouldn't be taking out debt to buy yourself time because the time's going to run out.
Has anyone come to you and asked you to mentor them?
Yeah, and I actually love that. I mean, I look at what I do. I mean, again, yes, I'm selling things, but first and foremost, I'm trying to help people prolong the enjoyment of what they do. And the more people that can do that, because I can't be everywhere, and I would love for somebody to come and do it way better than I'm doing it so I could learn from them. But if somebody wants to get into this and they're looking for guidance, I mean, I'm really lucky that I actually have big box stores that their employees call me and they're like, "Hey, we heard that you're the person to talk to. We're working with somebody that has a really challenging issue. We want to steer them right." And I'm not going to make the sale on that, but that person's going to be safer because those employees were willing to make that phone call. So whether it's an employee of another business or somebody that, if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do this on the West Coast, will you help me?" Absolutely, because this needs representation on the West Coast.
And why aren't, aside from the stress, this is sort of a bombastic question.
Hmm.
Aside from the stress it would put on your life,
Mhm.
Do you think that if you did go to the West Coast, there are several big shows in California, Arizona. Um, do you think you would increase your not only your volume but your take if you went to the West Coast as well? Or do you think you'd just be doing it to beat your head up against the wall for the same money?
I think there would be a little bit of a financial upside, but honestly, I don't think it would be drastic, especially with what it would cost in vendor fees, accommodations, staffing, over or inventory, all of those things. And frankly, I have plenty of clients on the West Coast because we do virtual fittings too. So somebody doesn't have to be physically standing in front of me for me to give them guidance. We have a really detailed process that we use for people to be able to virtually have a consultation, provide measurements, we make product recommendations. And I have a lot of clients in California. I have clients in Alaska. I have clients in Hawaii. Um, Everywhere that you could pretty much think of. And so, while I might be geographically limited in terms of physically being in front of someone, I'm not limited in being able to provide the service. And I think that goes back to the benefit of me looking at it as first being a service orientation rather than a retail orientation. I think that makes a huge difference. And we do travel. So we did a big event there last year that, frankly, I mean, it was fun, but I wouldn't do it again. Um, we have relationships with really wonderful trainers there and barns where I've got one barn I go every 2 to 3 years, and we do like 35 of their clients every 2 to 3 years to upgrade their safety equipment. And that takes me 2 to 3 days, and we fly everything out and fly back any excess. And it's a great trip. It's in Napa. Um, so I don't think that I need to expand there the same way that I have on the East Coast to get the benefit that is really
It's
out there.
already there. It's
Yeah.
already there for it. And what I did did your previous relationships give you those opportunities on the West Coast, or did the social media stuff
The
spur
social
all?
media. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
the social media for sure because like this one client in particular that I'm thinking about that's in California, actually the way that she found me was another client that I would work with was wearing some equipment that they had never seen before, and they asked her, they're like, "What is this?" And, this client was kind enough to say, "Oh my gosh, I just had this great experience. Here's what happened." And they called me and they're like, "We want to know if you'll come." And so I did, and it went from there. But she had also, once she got the information from this client, she researched me and, looked to see what I was about and so on and so forth. So again, it's building those client relationships. Like, to me, I feel like a client can really tell what I'm trying to do this for. And there will be times where I will turn a client away from products because I don't think it's in their best interest. I very frequently give people a set of product recommendations that are not the most expensive options. And they're like, "You didn't recommend the most expensive thing." I'm like, "I'm not interested in what's the most expensive thing. I'm interested in what is going to be most appropriate for you." And that in turn builds the relationships and gets the referrals and so on and so forth. I mean, I'm getting ready to go to a show in Upperville, Virginia. It's the oldest hunter jumper show in the country.
Yeah.
I go every year. I love it so much. But I have people, this will be my fourth, I believe it's my fourth year going, maybe even fifth. And I have people that come every single year, and either they're just coming to say hi and they want to tell me how their riding is going and how they feel safer, or they'll come and they'll buy something really small just because they want to support me in the business, not because they need anything. And I love that. Like, I don't need somebody to come buy something every single time. I'm thrilled that I have built relationships where people, think that I'm invested in them, and I am. They're the reason that I do what I do.
Yeah. So Someone who is thinking about jumping out there on the limb and going into business for themselves
Mhm.
from a inspiring standpoint, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Well, I'm going to be very real about what the advice is. And it may not be inspiring, but I think it's people need to recognize it. One, you have to be passionate about what you do. Do not do this because you see the opportunity to make money. Because most small businesses, it is not about getting rich. It's about doing it because you love it. You either love the product, you love the people, a combination of both, you see a need, whatever the case may be. Um, and two is be prepared, whatever the plan is for what you think you need to start with money wise, triple it because it's definitely going to cost you more than you think. And be prepared to work probably 3 times as many hours as you planned on, at least until you're big enough that you can build a team. And then do not compromise on the team that you're building. The team has to be exceptional because you cannot do it all on your own. And make sure that the people you're surrounding yourself with have very different strengths and weaknesses than you do, because you do not need somebody that can do everything exactly the same way. I want people to tell me what I'm doing wrong or to give me ideas that I haven't thought of. I don't need somebody that's just like me saying yes, because I'm not going to get better that way.
I want to follow up on that. And I know we're getting ready to wrap up in the next, what, 10 minutes, Jim?
Yep.
So part of this podcast came out of Jim and I's relationship that was built during transition here in Virginia uh, with the gubernatorial transition team. And during that time, I read a book called The E-Myth. And The E-Myth was written in 1993. It's got millions of copies out. And it's written by a guy who's explaining to you why small businesses fail and how to avoid it. And I'm going to apply one of the stories to you very quickly and then ask you a question. Martha is really good at baking pies. Everybody in the neighborhood loves Martha's pies. And they tell her, you should go in the pie business. Martha goes in the pie business, leases a building, gets an oven, and her pies are flying out the door. I mean, day one, she's killing it, right? But Martha doesn't know how to keep books. Martha doesn't have somebody to help her. So Martha goes and she hires someone to help her bake pies. But the books are still lacking. What are you not good at?
Oh gosh. um, I am not detail oriented.
So have you hired someone to help you with
I,
that?
yeah, I, I am very much a big picture person. I am creative. I am very relationship oriented. I can force myself to do the details, and obviously there are detailed things that I have to do, but it's not what I love and it's not what I'm good at. And if I'm going to work as much as I'm working, I'd rather be doing more of the stuff that I like to do and less of the stuff I don't, and find somebody else that is really good at what I'm not and that enjoys it. And I've been lucky enough to find that. And it's what I constantly look for. Like, I'm looking for people not just that are good at doing the stuff I'm not good at, but also enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, life's too short to be doing something you hate every single day. Um, we all have things that we have to do that we don't like, but that should be like a small portion of what you do. And the bigger portion should be what fulfills you and fuels you. So this is something that I know about myself. Like, for example, when new inventory comes in, triple checking it against what I've ordered and what I've paid for and going through it line by line when you might have 300 pieces coming in at a time. I don't like that kind of checklist, but I have people that get a lot of fulfillment that are like, oh yeah, we got everything. We didn't miss anything. Or, oh, you got to go get your $200 back because they shorted us or whatever the case may be. So yeah.
Jim Cramer once said, I'll never forget it. I used to watch that Fast Money show. Was it
Mhm.
Fast Money? The lightning round and
Yeah.
bye and all that stuff. And he once said something that has stuck with me. Never be afraid of the person who's considering the bottom line all the time, the guy or the woman at this point, it was early 2000s. The guy you got to worry about is a guy who's more interested in the creative aspect of whatever they're doing, and the person who is in fact more concerned about the end product, what it's going to look like, the end service, what it's going to be delivered like, than what their bottom line is going to show in the end. And I think that's something we're seeing more and more um, in this space that I'm now eat up with, right? Reading about, researching, is that people who have a creative bent and are committed, and you used the word passion 4 or 5 times during
Mhm.
the discourse of this, during our discourse, they're the people you have to look out for, I think.
Yeah.
I really do believe that someone who gets into a business, any business, um, and every business, by the way, big or small, started as small. That's
Absolutely.
something that has come out in this podcast in the past 3 or 4 episodes. Um, if you're in it to make a certain dollar amount per month, per week, per annum, you're not going to.
No.
Should you budget triple the amount of time as well as triple the amount of money?
I mean, that's what I've learned is that yes, I mean, whatever you think you're going to invest. So, whether it's you're buying an existing business, you still have to maintain it. So, the original purchase it's kind of the same as we say with horses. Buying the horse is the cheapest part.
Right.
It's the ongoing operation that is what will suck you dry if you don't budget it correctly. So, whether it's starting it and getting it off the ground or buying it, you still have to run it longer term and you have to be able to finance that.
Jim, as we get ready to finish up, I did want to ask one question that was completely greedy, horse greedy, and it's this.
Hmm.
How many people have come back to you over these past 5 years, 6 years, and said, my vest deployed and saved me?
So many, so many. And it every time that I see one of those messages, it just reinforces what I do. Whether it is somebody I deal with a lot of people that are like in their 70s and 80s, and they're like, I didn't get hurt and I get to ride another 5 or 10 years or whatever the case may be. That makes me so happy. Like, that's my dream is to be able to be riding that long. Or a parent who watched their child fall and was absolutely terrified, and the kid bounced back and was like, I'm okay. And the mom emails me like, this was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen, and my child was fine, and thank you. Or, a doctor that is like, if I would have gotten hurt, I couldn't have gone to work the next day and served my
Yeah.
patients. And because of this vest, maybe I have a bruise here or there, or I'm a little sore, but I'm walking and talking and not broken. So that is like for me, what is super rewarding is to have those interactions with people where, because if you're selling, a pair of boots or something, it can still be very rewarding, but you're not getting these messages that are potentially life changing. And to me, it's like there's nothing better in my mind.
Jim, I'm sorry. I had to ask that question last because if you see her face right now, that's why I wanted to sort of wrap it up with that because it, it's what I know drives you
Yeah.
is this idea of, I don't know how much money I made this year, but I know how many people I saved this year. Not saved, but I know how many people I helped this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is measurable. It is quantifiable. It might not be a hard number, but it's measurable.
Right, it's there. No.
Catherine, where can folks find you on social media and on the web?
Where can they not find Catherine
kind of
on social media?
Yes. So we have our website with a contact page. Our website is www.rideequisafe.com. We're on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook as Ride Equisafe. You can find me individually on LinkedIn, although I'm ashamed to say I'm not very active on LinkedIn, but Catherine with a C, the only right way to spell it. And my last name is Winter, just like the season. And if anybody, whether it's from within my industry or in a different industry, is, looking for a sounding board and just ideas, I am always happy to reciprocate what I was lucky enough to receive from the people that mentored me.
Folks, I did not ask Catherine to come on tonight because she's a horse person and I'm a horse person. I asked her to come on because of what she just said. She's wide open. She will talk to anybody. And I'm sort of the same way, as you can tell. But in the end, Catherine is the kind of person who meant what she just said. If you do want, a sounding board, don't take advantage of too much time. But if you've got a specific question and you're looking to open a business, and it doesn't have to be in the equestrian industry, we're talking about somebody who has a doctorate in business, and someone who could have made a lot more money in corporate America, who decided that, she wanted to follow her passion. And that's another reason we had you on tonight, because you're obviously dedicated to what you do because of the people you serve.
And I love it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to stop. Catherine, thank you very much for joining me and the best head of hair in small business. It must be interesting watching him jump. Well, I guess he always has a helmet.
The helmet's
It's
on.
always smushed down under a helmet. So,
but thank you very much for joining us. To everyone listening, thank you very much for tuning in to Small Biz, Big Ideas. Be good, be better, and be best. Thank you.
thank you guys.
Good night.